I am so happy to be here today, and I will share that this is a sincere happipiness because I got to hear Danielle read probably about a year and a half ago at a different institution. And we were still doing a lot on Zoom. So your reading was done via Zoom. And I was in my office and I wanted to show support, so I logged on, but I kind of did what some others do, which is like mute and camera off and kind of did a little multitasking because I want to show support, but I want to make sure I'm doing the 500 other things on my list of things to do. And I will tell you that from the moment our poet today opened her mouth and began to speak, I stopped. And just, all of a sudden the emails really seemed unimportant. I got up and I closed the door and just really embedded myself in your words, in your language, because it was so powerful to me. And I texted someone on the side who was not in the Zoom room, and I said, get in here. This is honey. This is just beautiful, wonderful, soothing words, visions, just everything calming and what we need right now. And the person joined and did agree with me. And I think you will see that here today. I absolutely know you will hear that here today. Someone sent me an article this morning because they noticed that the president and I exchange emails at really early hours, 4:47 a.m. I think the earliest was 3:05, but it is part of our DNA that we he and I both think about things in the middle of the night and act upon it very quickly because we know we're going to forget. And someone sent me an email saying, that's not right. Here's self-care. Sleep may not be high on my list of self-care things, and that's okay. That is all right. I'll sleep on Sunday. But I do make room and space for self-care when it comes to poetry and the arts and creativity. This is your self-care. This is the rest that we all need to really sit back, rejuvenate, recharge, and I can assure you that today will be a great example of that. So welcome so much, Danielle. Thank you all for coming. Tom, as always, thank you so much. Big love for all that you do and for all that you organize and bringing these moments of self-care for us and our students. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Provost Rodriguez. I'm Tom Laughlin, and welcome to this MCC Visiting Writer Series with Danielle Legros Georges. I am here and want to offer some thanks to a lot of people that help out, including Matthew Olson, Dean of Liberal Arts, our bookstore, our Beth Noel of the marketing department help us with this, as well as Steve Rossi and Shannon, who are in our Office of Student Engagement and help provide funds for food and for our speakers here. Again, help yourself to drinks, things while we're involved here today. Danielle will read poetry. She'll have a question and answer period. There's a raffling of some of her books, an opportunity to buy or have signed those books that were raffled off. I'm excited to welcome Danielle here. Danielle Legros Georges is the author of 3 collections of poetry: Maroon, published in 2001, The Dear Remote Nearness of You, which I have right here, Barrow Street Press, 2016, which was winner of the New England Poetry Club's Sheila Margaret Martin Book Prize, and a book of translations, Island Heart, the poems of Ida Faubert, which was published in 2021, as well as a poetry chapbook, Letters from Congo, which was published in 2017. Her poems have appeared widely in literary journals such as Agni, Callaloo, Black Renaissance, Ibbotson Street, Salamander, the American Poetry Review, as well as anthologies such as New Daughters of Africa, which was edited by Margaret Busby in 2019. Danielle Legros Georges was Poet Laureate of Boston from 2015 through 2019 and she edited City of Notions, an anthology of contemporary Boston poems, published by the City of Boston in 2017. Danielle Legros Georges was born in Haiti, raised in the United States. She received a BA from Emerson College in Boston and an MFA in poetry from New York University. Her many honors include Massachusetts Cultural Council fellowships, a Mass MoCA fellowship, a Penheim translation grant, and grants from the Boston Foundation, the Black Metropolis Research Consortium, and the Barbara Deming Memorial Fund. She is professor of creative writing at Lesley University. In describing the dear remote nearness of you, the award-winning writer Edwidge Danticat has said, this book will both move your heart and rattle you to the core. These lyrical, poignant, and powerful poems show Danielle Legros Georges' deep intellect and profound empathy, as well as her endless gifts as a poet, storyteller, and brilliant oracle of the human spirit. In a recent review of Island Heart, her more recent book, in the journal Wilderness House Literary Review, poet Denise Provost writes, "We are fortunate to have Legros Georges as Flaubert's muse of translation for Island Heart. Flaubert's soul is undoubtedly satisfied with the way this translation speaks and sings her powerful yearning songs to us. Though we live in another land, in another age, these poems strike the notes of our hearts with perfect pitch." Please help me welcome Danielle Legros Georges.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Professor Laughlin, for your very generous introduction and for your invitation. Thank you, Provost Rodriguez and VP of Everything. I love this title, for your kind welcome and words. Thank you, Dean Olson, who I just met and am very happy to meet. I would also like to thank Professor Ramirez and his students, with whom I visited earlier and had an engaged conversation about literary translation. So glad to see you here. Professor Ramirez, I just want to thank you for your amazing work around La Guagua. I was here in 2017, and the space and the events that you created were just remarkable for what it means for poets and translators and thinking about language. So thank you for all of that. Hey, audience. Hey, audience. And audience over there, too? Hey, audience. I'm going to read for about 40 minutes, and then we're going to have a Q&A. Okay. So I will begin with some poems from my book, The Dear Remote Nearness of You. I'm just going to mark my time. Only. Nature hides the most beautiful design, the norm, the anomaly, the rare, the rarest, which is to say, the only. And aren't we each twins even? Only? Still life with orbs. Between the thing and the name of it is a world, and a world behind this world. There is my mask placed on the table. There is the wooden table and the space beneath it. There is an orange on the floor when it should be on the table in the yellow basket meant for oranges, but which contains a cat licking one front paw. What do cats know of oranges? What do birds know of water unless they plunge their beaks into it, breaking some poor fish's sleep? What do fish know of birds except the slash of bill, the sudden flash, the stop? Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. So I'm thinking about the many instances of armed conflict and current sites of war around the world, and how they often disallow for the rites of mourning, and how they complicate remembrance, which I feel is a really important part of this project of human dignity. So I'm thinking, of course, of the people of Ukraine, and at the same time, the people in places less visible to us, Afghanistan, Ethiopia, and Yemen, and Palestine, and Myanmar, and Haiti. And also thinking about how people can be displaced in their own countries and not protected by their states. And this poem that I'm about to read takes up this notion of statelessness. A stateless poem. If you are born and you are stateless, if you are born and you are homeless, if your state and home are not yours, and yet everything you know, what are you? Who are you? And who am I without the dark fields I walk upon, the streets I know, the blue corners I call mine, the ones you call yours? Who am I to call myself citizen and human and free? And who are you to call yourself landed and grounded and free? And who is judge enough? Who native? Who other? And who are we who move so freely without accents of identification, without skin of identification, with all manner of identification, with gold seals of approval, with stamps of good fortune, with the accident of blameless birth? Who are we to be so lucky? In this poem, do not use the word revolution. Use instead a slow swelling of light that begins at a beginning when the scar giver forges the scar and forgets, and the bearer remembers indelibly the mark on the body, recalls how a mark can be made on a body. In the ear a clear consciousness whispered. Use reply, because peace is a place free of trouble, a blue firmament, a gold sun that reaches the skin. Use instead the equalization of all suns, the standing next to, the standing for, rotation and the equilibrium of stars, objects held together by their own gravity. Grave is the flame of dissonance. Grave is the mind honed with the vision of its unity. Grave is the fist raised of the body. The next poem I will read is a request from Professor Ramirez. Now, I don't know if you're going to be happy about this request. And I understand that the students of your class also read this poem, so you know this poem. And a little bit about it. A few years ago, I was commissioned, actually, with 3 other poets to write poems about the missing history of the Old Manse in Concord. The Old Manse is a house that is connected both to the American Revolution of 1776, the actual overthrow of the British in what would become the United States, and what is called the Second American Revolution, the revolution of ideas, so the transcendentalist movement in the 1830s through roughly the 1850s and 1860s. So this is an important historical site in Concord, Massachusetts. And it was also a site in which there were people who were enslaved. So while the transcendentalist movement, this intellectual movement is taking place, there are also people working, right, doing all the horrible work that will help support the intellectual work of that transcendentalist movement. So as I was doing my research at the Old Manse and also at the Robbins House, which was this not reconstructed, but a saved house of enslaved people, I found this document, a bill of sale for a 2-year-old girl in 1740, and I was just shocked. Just not that I wasn't surprised that there were such bills of sale, but to actually read the bill of sale was just a whole other experience, and it stayed with me for a very, very long time. It actually wouldn't leave me, and so I wrote a poem, in some ways as a response to the bill of sale. The first half of the poem is the actual bill of sale, which you'll hear me read, and the second half is my response. Poem as bill of sale and sight of stifled rage and sorrow. You can hear me? Yes? Yes. I'm sorry, before I begin, in the bill of sale, there's a crossing out of a name. The girl's name, the 2-year-old, was originally Violet, and she's renamed in the bill of sale. She was Violet, and that name is crossed out, and it's followed by Nancy. So when I read that, I'm just gonna do this gesture, okay, for any crossing out. Poem as bill of sale and sight of stifled rage and sorrow. Bill of sale for enslaved 2-year-old girl, Violet, name crossed out and changed to Nancy.
Know, all men, by these presents, that I, William Wilson of Concord, in the county of Middlesex of New England, generally for the sum of 30 pounds to me secured and paid by Sarah Melvin of said Concord, widow, do hereby fully and absolutely sell, grant, convey, and pass over to said Sarah Melvin, her heirs and assigns, forever, a certain Negro girl, being a slave, about 2 years of age, called Nancy, to be to her, her heirs and assigns, for her and their use and service during the said Negro girl's natural life. Hereby for myself, heirs, executors, and administrators, warranting her, said Negro girl, to her, said Sarah Melvin, her heirs and assigns, from the legal claims or demands of any person. Witness my hand and seal, April 22nd, AD 1740. Witnesses, Thomas Jones, Thomas Miles, William Wilson. Bill of sale for enslaved 2-year-old girl. Baby Violet. Name sustained and repeated many times. Violet. 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 Witness my hand and seal the day she is born. Witnesses, mother, father, midwife who brings this child into the world. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and move us into a fairly recent past with a poem that has a pretty bad title. And so you are warned, there are some swears and some bad language in here. The poem is entitled Shit Hole. So if you must leave after that, you are warned. A few years back, the current US president, who is not this US president, the sitting president, became frustrated with lawmakers who wanted to extend protected status to immigrants from places like El Salvador, Haiti, which is my birthplace, and certain African countries, who would be especially vulnerable to violence and death and disease if they were to be repatriated. And the then president asked, why are we having all these people from shithole countries come here? Being from such a shithole country, I thought, oh man, let me try to understand this perspective, right? For just a minute, just for a moment, let me, perhaps consider a persona poem. You creative writing students know what a persona poem is, sort of attempting to enter the perspective of another. And so I attempted to momentarily enter the perspective of the president who made that statement. With this poem called Shithole. I am the interrupter, hijacking your train of thoughts. Call me maldito, cabrón, la bestia. Get on top of me and I'll throw you off after you beg. I'll ride you like a borrowed mule, drive you across the river to sell you a bit. Call me coyote. Call me wolf. Call me whatever the fuck animal you like. Missionary, priest. Call me Mr. President. I'm all green, a blue gasp. I'm the womb sterilizer, syringe, and no suction. I'll drown you in a teaspoon of potassium chloride. I was born an abomination. At the age of 1, I crawled out of the Congo, dragging my sack full of hands. At the age of 2, I mechanized my scythe. At the age of 3, I wove myself a cape of flies. At the age of 4, I blew the noses off sphinxes and studied the hieroglyphs of your tomb. At the age of 5, I became an angel, cunning, big-eared. At the age of 6, I shot down the moon, then I shot down the sun. I am a nuclear bomb set for noon, the paratext of your nightmare, the translator of your tribulation. I am a constipation, the parasite entering your left ear, the worm nestled in your colon, the sweetest, the sweetest, the sweetest, the sweetest liar, the drone of your inner war, the architect of your gas chamber, the poisoner of your water, the multiplier. I am the radioactive sphincter, the unthinkable, intolerable, bleached ass. Poem for the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. This poem I wrote after the devastating earthquake of 2010 in Haiti. And I was asked to write a poem that would go into a literary journal in support of relief efforts. And I was constantly hearing Haiti referred to as the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere. And it still is referred to as the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere. It's a label I find problematic because what isn't discussed often with the label is how Haiti has become impoverished, and how it has struggled with International Monetary Fund debt, how colonial powers have invaded it, extracted its wealth, how it is also struggling with its own homegrown issues of former dictators and so on. So it's like, oh, those poor people, they can't get it together without looking at some of the structural forces that have affected Haiti's impoverishment. And also, you know, being a Haitian and traveling to Haiti and having family in Haiti, I don't just see Haiti's poverty. It's a place of great beauty and a place of great difficulty as well. So this is the poem. Poem for the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Oh, poorest country, this is not your name. You should be called beacon. You should be called flame. Almond and bougainvillea, garden and green mountain, villa and hut. Girl with red ribbons in her hair, books under arm, charmed by the light of morning. Charcoal cellar in black skirt, encircled by dead trees. You country, our merchant woman and eager clerk. Grandfather at the gate, at the crossroads, with the flashlight, with all in sight. Thank you. This is a snapping crowd, and I like it.
Thank you. So now I'm going to read from my most recent book, which is a book of translations that Professor Laughlin mentioned. And this is, Ida Faubert was this woman who was writing in the early part of the 20th century. She is a Haitian and French. Her father was a French president. Her father was a Haitian president. Her mother was a French socialite. And her father was given a coup, and the family moved to France in the early part of the 20th century. And so she was raised there. She received the education of an elite girl. She was a privileged biracial girl who didn't conform to the assigned roles for women of color, certainly during her time. And she loved women and men. We would call it queer. We might call her queer today. As a young woman, she went back to Port-au-Prince and published under her own name, which was unusual for a woman at the time. So it's just a general badass. And strange too, because she was writing, while she was writing in the 20s and 30s and 40s, she's writing in this anachronistic style. So she's writing in a style of a time much earlier than her own, in a romantic era style, which privileged deep emotion and with lots of references to nature. She wrote tons of love poems. And so I'm going to read to you, and so I just found her fascinating, and I thought I have to translate her, and I did. And so I'm going to read to you a couple of her poems. The first is called Tropical Night. And I'm going to read to you her original French. It's in 3 stanzas, 3 quatrains. So you hear the wonderful musicality, the rhyme, and the meter, the rhythm of her original. And then I'll read to you my English translation. Soir tropical. Le soir est lumineux. Le soir est tendre et beau. Le soleil cette teinte, la lune est sur les roses. Une langueur pénètre au cœur même des choses. Les grands palmiers noirs rêvent au bord de l'eau. Les jasmins ont mêlé leurs branches étoilées aux lianes en fleurs. La laine de l'été caresse les fruits lourds. La grave volupté laisse traîner son voile au détour des allées. Là-bas, sur le chemin. Pas un chant, pas un bruit. Rien ne trouble la paix d'un bonheur qu'on écoute. Viens sentir les parfums sur la bord de la route et respirer mon âme éparse dans la nuit. Tropical night. The night is luminous. The night is tender and beautiful. The sun has obscured itself. The moon rests on the roses. A languor enters the very heart of things, and the tall black palms dream at the water's edge. The jasmine have mixed their star-studded branches with lianas in bloom. Summer's breath caresses the heavy fruit. The dense sensuality lets its long veil linger along the sinuous paths. Over there, on the way, not a song, not a sound. Nothing disturbs the peace of a joy we listen to. Come, take in the fragrances at the road's edge and breathe in my soul, spread across the night. And the second poem is, as I mentioned, she's a great writer of love poems about the beauty of love and sometimes about the badness of love. This is called, in French, Mon amour, attendez. In English, Wait, my love. When you forget that you held me captive in your arms like a thing that was yours, when you grow tired of my sweet love, wait until night falls to tell me. Then you won't see my undone face, my sorry eyes, my trembling mouth. The dark will veil my crushing sorrow. Wait until night falls completely. Wait until the wind makes the trees wail and the birds of the woods weep in their nests. Then you won't hear my sobs or the cry of my heart, colder than marble. Wait until thunder darkens the sky and it pours nearby on the road. In the sad night, you'll mistake, no doubt, the tears of my eyes with the tears of the sky. One day, you'll forget that you held me captive in your arms like a thing that was yours. So to tell me this, have the sweetest words. Wait, my love, until night falls. Ida Faubert is very intense. And I'm really proud of this book because it was just an all-woman, all-girl project, so Ida Faubert. And this image is from a painting of a dear friend of mine, a wonderful painter, Colette Brésila. And the design was done by a former Lesley University student of mine, Roxanne Carmagnag. So I just love that this is like a great girl collab. And two more poems. This is called Little Faru, and there's a French word that appears a few times in it. It's éblouissante, and éblouissante means dazzling. Little Faru,
They are all gathered together, a black family at Arcus Bay Beach Resort for the birthday of little Faru, who is 2, and the father gives an elevated discourse in honor of the éblouissante girl, which seems, éblouissante, like an adjective one would use to describe a debutante or an evening of diplomats. And little Faru is running around the pool in a pink and green bikini, contrapuntal to her brown skin, and presenting her round belly to the world, which mirrors her father's own rotundity. I'm just hanging back with my ex-husband because we're friends like that and vacation together from time to time. He's lounging on a chair, looking like a sated baby, handsome. Why there is a rotting banana next to him, I don't know. The banana is not a metaphor. It's just there, but weird, right? As I was saying, there is Faru and her family, and the sea not far, now éblouissante, so many points of light in the distance, the sun so in sync with the sea's movement that all but blue is obliterated. Things should end here. Really, they should. But I am a black woman in a black country watching a black family just being. So marvelous a thing this is, so marvelous. Du Bois's double consciousness be damned. And my last poem is entitled The Afternoon, and it opens with 3 lines I borrowed from the great poet Mahmoud Darwish. These are the 3 lines. If I were told, by evening you will die, so what will you do until then? The afternoon. If I were told, by evening you will die, so what will you do until then? Of course, there would be a flurry of emails, or perhaps one email sent to all. No, that would not do. The flurry, then, of where to find the keys, the passwords, codes, the papers that sort a life. Meaning. I would want to see the round faces of the soon-to-be mourners of my family, shining moons against a dark backdrop. Friends, I would wish to view the sky in whatever mood it's taken, bright like this morning's or thunderous. Something's happening. Why not bolts of light thrown by some god? I would call my great love of youth, when pain and beauty were one thing, who is married to someone else, whose number I do not have, but would try for a half hour to find before forsaking the task to futility. Flowers would be necessary. White tulips, white roses, the afros of hydrangea in vases set throughout the house. The time would pass too quickly with this work. I would walk down the stairs to bid adieu to my neighbors. Goodbye, I would say to them all. Back up, I would regard my dead relatives in photos to let them know I was on my way. I would bathe, brush my hair into a bun, paint my nails indigo. Frankincense would burn, drift up in plumes. I would lie on the couch with the music of drums, bien valu, and call out to them, I am ready. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danielle. And we have time for some question and answers. So I'd love to hear your questions for her in response to poems and thoughts that came to any of that. And I want to start, actually, if I could, was thinking about your stint as the Boston Poet Laureate, and I just wondered about how that maybe influenced you, your own poetry, your own writing, and a sense of the importance of poetry within a community, a city or community. So.
Yeah. Well, I was a Poet Laureate of Boston between 2015 through 2019, and it was just an absolutely wonderful experience. The role is one that has you engaging the public and entering the public sphere, and trying to enhance opportunities for Bostonians with poetry. And I found in my work that a lot of people appreciated poetry and engaged poetry, although we're sometimes reluctant to say that they liked poetry or were writing poems. And I think that's maybe because, you know, there can sometimes be this intimidating language around poetry and people feeling that they need to find the deep meaning always in poetry, although poetry does have deep meaning. I'm not suggesting that it doesn't. I just appreciated the exchanges with folks, and I think part of my work involved reminding people of the connections they already had to poetry. I think some of the earliest texts we read are poetic texts. Think of nursery rhymes that children are read, and schoolyard rhymes and so on. So I think part of what I really enjoyed was making connections or helping people make connections to the poetry they already had in their own lives, and then just bringing more poetry into the public sphere, and also elevating the poetry that existed around me. So it was a really wonderful opportunity. Something else that I learned was writing what is called an occasional poem, a poem to present at a particular moment, say the State of the City address or an opening of a library, is really, really hard. It's really hard. You have to think about audience, you have to think about tone, and so on, as opposed to just letting the poems sort of that you want to write emerge. So I found that really challenging and a good challenge, but really loved the role. And I think poetry is, you know, one of the oldest and most beautiful art forms, and so worthy of engagement. I hope I've answered the question.
Oh, yeah, no. More questions? Steve?
Yeah, sort of two-part process question. So do you write daily, or is that, and then the other part of that is, do you tend to write towards a bigger work, or are you doing a more responsorial to your life or occasional poetry, those sorts of things? So is it, the two parts are, do you write daily, and which type of writing are you doing? More large-scale project or individual pieces, collective?
I do not write daily. I wish I did. So I try to create time for writing, and if I don't get to write, I'm thinking. So that's, I think, part of the poetic and artistic project, thinking and also absorbing. So I think that's part of it too. So I try not to flagellate myself or beat myself if I don't get to the page. So that's one. And do I sort of do I write toward projects, or do I let the poems come? As a younger person, I let the poems come because there was a lot of stuff that needed to just like come out, you know? And poetry has always been a space of inquiry for me, and I had and continue to have lots of questions, but I had a lot more questions as a younger person. So it was just this kind of wow, right? So I let those poems come, and now in my venerable age and state, I've been working on, projects. So I'm working on a book that is about this project. And I find that harder to write, actually, writing about a thing, right? Because this doesn't happen as often. And I like when that happens. Yeah, although that doesn't mean that I won't return to a sort of a non-project project, right? Or a non-project book. So. Yes.
After hearing some of the poems, I can assume that you're very into romance as a genre. Do you have any recommendations?
Is that you, David?
Yes.
Do I have any recommendations for romance?
Yes. Well, I mean, romance works.
Oh, romance works. I don't read romance works. Although, I read Ida Faubert in order to translate her. But I cannot say that I have writers of the Romantic era that I would recommend to you. I think that would be a question you would have to research and pursue. It's a good question, though.
Thank you.
And it's going to make me think about it.
So, her name's
Ida Faubert. Yeah.
Can I leave her to write that down for me? Like, oh, perfect. I'll take a picture of that.
Yeah, you can take a picture. Okay.
It's on our website.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Kaylee.
So I was just kind of curious about your researching when you're writing about, like for instance, slavery. How do you kind of approach that? Because obviously you need to have a good amount of information so that you're being responsible and fully getting it across. But at the same time, I feel like there's probably too much research that can be done that then kind of affects how it comes out, makes it too academic. Do you have any thoughts on that, your process?
That's a great question. I think if you're taking up history, research is really important. And as you mentioned, there's a certain responsibility you have to history, but there's also a difference between facts and truth, right? And there's also the question of what to do in spaces in which documentation doesn't exist. And that's especially the case for, in some instances, African American history or Black history, right? And for reasons we're aware of, right? So how do you work with facts and then write into a space in which the record may not exist? And so that's a challenge. There's a really wonderful scholar named Saidiya Hartman who's coined the term critical fabulation. And it involves, using fact or scattered facts to try to imagine the experiences of people whose voices have been suppressed. And so I use that as a kind of strategy.
Thank you, that makes a lot of sense, yeah.
What types of things did you do when you were younger, when you were moving on from personal pieces and kind of going on to different projects, more universal types of pieces?
What did I do? I don't know that I thought a great deal about it, but I think we are both individuals, all of us, and people who exist within these broad
structures and frameworks, and whose lives are affected by history and geography. And so moving, I think I moved from like, okay, I feel, X because that horrible boyfriend did X, or didn't do X or whatever, to, are there particular phenomena or gender dynamics that are affecting this thing, or how do I think about this more broadly? Are there shared experiences? Are there shared histories? And how do I think about that? I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it does, thank you.
And think about questions like, we think about existential questions. Why am I alive? Why am I doing this? Like, how did I get here? But we can think about, like, how did my family get here? How did I get to this place to be thinking the kinds of thoughts that I'm thinking?
I wonder if you could take a couple minutes maybe to share some information about Leslie. Our students are always looking for those next steps, and Leslie has wonderful programs. I just wondered if you'd share things for students thinking about transfer.
Aha, okay, more practical question, yes. So, as you know, I teach at Leslie University, and Leslie is part of a program called the Massachusetts Transfer Guarantee Program that guarantees admission to students from community colleges who have at least a 2.5 GPA. And this program started in 2021. So I would really encourage you all, if you're interested in Leslie, to think about that transfer program. We have we have actually two wonderful undergraduate colleges. One is a College of Art and Design, and one is a College of Art and Social Sciences. And our undergraduate degrees are 120 credits. We have a pretty generous transfer policy. It means students can transfer up to 90 credits into our program for the College of Art and Science. I think it's fewer for the College of Art and Design. And for students who are English students and creative writing students, we have 4 humanities undergraduate programs, 1 in creative writing, 1 in English, 1 in history, and 1 in adult studies for generally older students who have had some life experience and who want to study next to their peers. Really great creative writing classes, great English classes,
And graduate programs.
and graduate programs. I teach in the Master of Fine Arts in creative writing. David?
Regarding Leslie, do you have dorms there?
We do.
Also,
What is it?
also I wanted to ask, where is it located?
It's in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We have 3 campuses, one right behind Harvard Law School, one in Porter Square, and one on Brattle Street. That's our South Campus. So they're quite lovely campuses.
Cool. I'll check it out. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Well, looking at time, and I want to raffle, and also maybe individual questions. Danielle, I'm sure would be happy to
Yes.
speak with you individually, but we had done a raffle. Anybody who is a student who has not filled out a raffle ticket, can you hand me one? Anybody not? Oh, you got one, great, add it to the mix, good. So in our, Owen, you're gonna do the honors. Yes, you have to pick names. And help yourself to snacks and drinks while we pick names, and word people and figure out. Most people virtual maybe and not having that opportunity, but you're here in person. Drum roll, please.
And the winner of either either card, it says, yeah, four, right?
Yes, yeah, well, one of them.
One.
So, yeah, I guess the first people will let them choose.
Okay,
Yeah.
either either card or remote, the dear remote nearness of you is Kaylee.
More. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, practice hard.
Great.
Okay. The next winner is Colby.
Colby.
I didn't realize that one goes.
Yes.
All right.
Where are those drums? John Murphy?
John Murphy.
John Murphy. Great. So,
Anna Maria Morganti.
great. Super. And Danielle will be happy to sign your book. If people are interested in, don't get one, there's additional ones if you want to.
Okay. Lexi.
Yeah. There you go. Awesome. More. I love this. I love giving stuff away. That's awesome.
Okay. Next winner is Woodland.
You want? Great. Next one.
Next one
Yes.
is Neil with an A.
That one's great.
And Bridget Landers.
Two more.
David McCain.
David. Did you write McCain?
Oh, no, I didn't David okay.
Oh, David M.
Oh, David
Oh,
M.
because there might have been another David McCain.
Okay. And
Oh, there's a lot of David
I
McCain.
need to hear the official.
Well, the Aquaman, no one goes by David McCain.
So.
Olivia
Great. That's our. Thank you again. Let's give another big round of applause. And I just want a couple of quick announcements before you sign your books and chat with Danielle.